story premise. In a war-ravaged corner of the galaxy, the brutal Thrask Dominion, a race of cold, mechanized alien conquerors, believes they've broken the last of humanity's resistance. Their armored walkers patrol the desert moon Xanthera 9, hunting down the remaining survivors like prey. But buried beneath the dunes, unseen and unyielding, lies one final line of defense: Corporal Elira Vance. A legendary sniper long thought lost to grief and ghost missions, Elira has been called upon for an impossible task: stop the Thrask's most devastating weapon, the Basilisk, a towering war machine armed with anti-everything armor, before it reaches a hidden network of human refugees. She has one bullet, no backup, and no margin for error. But Elira isn't just aiming to stop the Basilisk. She's aiming to make sure the galaxy never underestimates a human sniper again, and especially not a woman who's got one round left, and everything to prove. What follows is a high-stakes, heat-soaked standoff between overwhelming firepower and precision vengeance, where legends aren't born, they're fired. The wind rolled like breath across the dunes, carrying nothing but silence and heat. Xanthera 9, once a mineral-rich colony moon, was now just a graveyard of dust and wreckage. Shattered hulls of drop pods lay half-buried in the sand like fossilized bones. The sun hung motionless, bleaching everything it touched in hues of amber and white. No birds, no bugs, just wind and the occasional thump of distant artillery over the horizon. Corporal Elira Vance lay still beneath a camouflage tarp, her form indistinguishable from the baked ridges of the landscape. Her armor had long since lost its shine, coated in a layer of dust and heat-diffusing paste. Her rifle, ancient by most military standards, rested across her chest like a trusted companion. Modified, scarred. Its scope was scratched, the suppressor rusted along its seam. But it worked, so did she. Her breath was steady, nearly imperceptible. Every muscle in her body knew silence. Every instinct knew not to waste movement. Beneath her, the sand vibrated. Faint tremors spaced too evenly to be natural. She didn't flinch. She just listened. The Thrask were coming. We never should have stayed on Xanthera. That's what we all said. The voice wasn't in her ear. It was in her memory. 6 months ago, Elira had a unit. 14 of them. Sharpshooters, scouts, quiet professionals. She had been their lead. And then one by one, ambushes, bombardments, that one goddamned skirmish near the sulfur pits. It ended. The final time she'd checked in with command, all she'd gotten back was static and fire codes. She stayed anyway. It wasn't martyrdom. It wasn't even vengeance. It was habit. And maybe something deeper than that. The satellite uplink blinked to life in her scope. Fuzzy at first, then clear. A glowing red vector swept across her overlay. A moving blip the size of a small town. The Basilisk. She grimaced. That's not a patrol walker. Corporal Vance, come in. The voice in her comm was sharp but frayed at the edges. Captain Ro Jin, her last surviving superior. We just got confirmation. A Thrask Basilisk is heading straight for grid point Kilo 6. The tunnels under that ridge hold over 2,000 refugees, engineers, medical staff, children. If that thing makes it within a kilometer, it'll collapse the whole substructure. Elira didn't answer at first. She ran calculations in her head. Distance, terrain, line of sight. No access to drone support. Too risky for artillery. She was the only asset in range. She shifted her rifle slightly, peering through the scope across the heat waves rippling in the distance. Elira, I'm here. You're the only one close enough. We don't have anything else. Do what you can. The line clicked out. She pulled the bolt of her rifle back and inspected her last round. It was nothing fancy. A custom-built, armor-piercing slug with a depleted uranium core. No explosive charge, no tracking tech, no AI assistance. Just mass, velocity, and trajectory. A relic from when snipers still trusted math more than microchips. One shot. She ran a cloth over the round like it was ceremonial, then slid it into the chamber with a sound that felt too loud for a world so quiet. Elira leaned back against the dune, let the rifle settle into the groove she'd carved in the sand days earlier. She knew exactly where she needed to be. She'd built this nest with patience and purpose. A shadow flickered across her mind. Her last team, laughing under firelight, sharing a bottle of synthetic whiskey. The youngest of them, Margot, had always joked Elira could shoot a tick off a Thrask's antenna without waking the hive. Then the hive woke, then the hive burned, and now she was alone. A gust of wind shifted the tarp slightly, revealing a glimpse of her profile, sun-chapped lips, a scar across her jaw, and green eyes fixed like lasers through the scope. She saw it now. A shimmer of dark, chitinous metal on the toe. Horizon, the basilisk walker. Towering, four-legged, humming with electromagnetic shielding, but even titans had knees. She exhaled slowly, watching the shimmer of the scope cut through the thermal noise. Then, almost under her breath, she whispered, "I don't need more than one." The first thing Elira felt was the vibration. Not sound, not sight. Just a low, rhythmic thudding, like the heartbeat of something enormous. It traveled up through the sand, into her elbows, through the scope resting against her brow. Each impact registered as a muscle twitch in her cheek, and then she saw it. The Thrask basilisk rose like a monolith from the shimmering heat. Its 12-meter frame towered on four wide, jointed legs, each one slamming into the desert floor with hydraulic force. Its outer hull was matte black, gleaming slightly where the shielding rippled with adaptive camouflage. Turrets lined its upper carapace, anti-air missiles, chain-fed railguns, electronic warfare spires. A walking fortress. She watched it climb a dune with the grace of a tank possessed by a predator. The heat distorted the image, but she could still see the central command eye, glowing with a cold, emerald pulse. Even from this distance, it radiated menace. Elira inhaled through her nose, exhaled slow. She dialed the wind into her scope. The dune field was deceptively calm, but at this range, nearly 2 kilometers, the slightest eddy of wind could pull the shot inches off target. Dust was already picking up from the walker's advance. She adjusted again. 27 millirads west. 2.1 degrees up angle, drop compensated, drift accounted for, scope adjusted for 1.8 seconds of hang time. She ran it again, and again. Her eye flicked to the left, terrain survey. The ridge the basilisk would cross had been one of her chosen variables. It had a saddle slope that would momentarily expose the walker's rear quarter. Not much, not long. But just enough. Through the haze, she saw it. A thin vertical cylinder running along the hind quadrant of the basilisk's body. A coolant conduit, likely tied to the primary engine loop. If she could rupture it, it'll cook from the inside. Out, she murmured. She reached into the cloth-wrapped pouch at her waist and retrieved her last custom round. The casing was heavier than standard issue, hand-loaded with stabilized uranium and coated in a plasma-reactive igniter tip, designed not to explode on contact, but to puncture, ignite, and superheat internal systems, especially when directed near sensitive cooling mechanisms. The shot would have to bounce once, angled off a titanium outcrop embedded in the dune side, to hit from the correct vector. A direct shot wouldn't breach the armor. She recalibrated again, estimating ricochet angle down to the micron. Even a half degree of error would mean failure. Barrel heat, thermal bloom, compensating, margin. For distortion under 20%, she whispered it like a litany, like prayer. Then she chambered the round with deliberate, reverent slowness. The bolt slid home with a metallic thunk. In the pause before her next breath, something flickered in the periphery of her memory. A face, wide eyes, a gap-toothed smile. Laughing in the rain on another world, her sister Lena. 12 years old the last time Elira saw her alive, the strike on Vega's landing. The Thrask hadn't even targeted military assets that day. It was civic suppression, a term Elira had come to hate. Lena had died in a firestorm alongside hundreds of civilians. Elira hadn't been there, couldn't have stopped it. But she remembered every scream that came through the emergency band. She remembered every second of silence afterward. For her, the words came out a rasp. She reset her breath, recentered her eye in the scope. The basilisk began its ascent. Its legs splayed slightly as it adjusted to the slope, right on cue. Its rear chassis tilted, exposing the coolant conduit. Timing window, 0.58 seconds. Distance, 19,984 meters. Angle of impact, 27.4 degrees offset. Wind, stable. Dust, rising. She began her countdown. 30 seconds. That's when she saw her. A flicker of movement. A small figure, 10 years old at most, scrambling across the lower dune. Brown hair pulled into twin braids, arms waving frantically, climbing over the rocks in direct line with the basilisk's path. What the hell? Elira yanked the focus wide. A refugee child, likely from the outer vents of the tunnel colony, lost or trying to retrieve someone. Her heart spiked. The girl's back was turned, unaware of the death machine looming behind her. She was seconds from being crushed and from blocking Elira's shot. "Captain, there's a child in the walker's path. Grid 3, slope 10, she hissed into the comm. No response. Static. Elira's hand hovered over the trigger. 20 seconds. The basilisk's steps were slower on the incline. Its rear was still exposed, but not for long. She toggled magnification and centered on the girl again. Freckled cheeks, barefoot, sprinting now. Lena. No, not Lena, but Rena, her mind whispered. Just a name, a phantom label. But it fit. She looked like her, moved like her. Terrified, reckless, brave. If Elira fired now and the girl turned wrong, collateral damage. Friendly fire. The shot could incinerate her. But if she waited, the basilisk's coolant vein would vanish from view. 15 seconds. Elira's breath came sharp and shallow now, her sniper's discipline battling pure instinct. She could see Rena trip, skin her knee, and scramble back up. 10 seconds. The walker loomed just behind. Dust kicked high around its legs. The sun flared off its carapace. Heat shimmer threatened to veil the coolant vein completely. 5 seconds. Rena cleared the ridge, slid down the far side, out of view. Elira snapped her eye back to the scope. Coolant, vein exposed, all the angles clicked into place. She took one breath, one final moment, then squeezed the trigger. Elira's finger tightened on the trigger. Crack. The rifle bucked hard against her shoulder. The shot exploded from the barrel in a blinding flash, and the scope immediately fractured under the stress. Heat surged up the length of the weapon, searing her gloves. She tossed it aside without a glance. This is it, it's flying. The round sliced through the scorched air with lethal elegance. Traveling 1,284 meters in under 2 seconds, it obeyed her math, her desperation, her rage. At 2,200 meters, it passed a heat vortex kicked up by the basilisk's left step, deviating 0.3 degrees, exactly as anticipated. At 900 meters, it encountered the jagged outcrop, angled just right. Ping, the bullet ricocheted, now aimed not at the coolant conduit, but lower, toward the basilisk's joint node. A newer target Elira had clocked only seconds before pulling the trigger. A bold move. Riskier than the coolant strike. But she knew why she'd made the change. Because Rena was too close. And the joint node had a fuel coupling bracket just behind its armored shell. The round punched through a ventilation grill, precisely between armor plates, an opening only a few centimeters wide, and then it was gone, inside the machine. For a half second, there was silence. Then, whoomph. An explosive column of white-hot gas erupted from the basilisk's side. The machine buckled mid-stride, a metallic screech echoing through the dunes. Superheated pressure had ruptured its interior fuel containment. One rear leg snapped, folding in on itself. Another explosion, a secondary detonation, ignited the basilisk's fuel core, Ka Thum. Fire roared from the walker's midsection. Armor, plates peeled off like banana skins. One of the upper turrets shot skyward like a bottle rocket, spinning into the sand 100 meters away. Elira ducked behind a dune as debris rained down. A wheel-sized hunk of shrapnel slammed into the sand, inches from her face kicking up a storm of grit. Her ears rang from the blast. Heat seared the back of her neck. When she looked up, blinking through the haze, the basilisk was down. One front leg twitched, then collapsed completely. The walker tipped sideways, slamming into the desert floor in a cloud of smoke and fire. Fuel hissed and crackled. What remained of the command eye dimmed and cracked like brittle glass. She had done it. One shot. One impossible shot. Then she saw her. Rena. The girl stumbled out of a tangle of wreckage, coughing. A massive shard of the basilisk's plating had embedded itself in the sand just in front of her. A twisted slab of steel that had shielded her from the explosion. Elira's lungs seized. For a moment she couldn't breathe, but the girl was alive. The sniper's hands trembled. She stared down at the ruined wreck of her rifle. The barrel had split, the scope cracked, the grip scorched. It would never fire again. She didn't need to, and not anymore. Her comm crackled, a weak but unmistakable voice cutting through the static. Vance? Elira? It was Captain Ro Jin. Elira touched her ear. Still here. A beat of silence. Then, "You did it. Elira. You did it." Elira allowed herself a breath. Just one. A new sound pierced the air, distant engines, high-pitched and angry. She turned her head east. On the far edge of the horizon, just beneath the twin suns, she could see glints of metal. Thrask reinforcements, coming fast. Of course they'd respond. No celebration, no ceremony, just survival. Elira pulled herself to her knees. Her legs ached. Her ribs were bruised from the recoil. She grabbed her emergency sidearm, a small kinetic pistol with only 2 rounds left, and jammed it into her belt. Then she started down the slope, stumbling toward the girl. Rena looked up, wide-eyed and teary, just as Elira dropped beside her. You're not a ghost," the girl whispered. "Not yet," Elira said, managing a wry smile. "Come on, kid. Time to move." She scooped the girl up in her arms, ignoring the protest in her limbs, the agony in her shoulder. Behind them, the wreckage hissed and groaned. Overhead, the sky boiled with approaching shapes. But in Elira's arms, Rena was real, alive, warm. And that was all that mattered. The desert winds howled low and mournful across the dunes of Xanthera 9. Twin suns burned overhead, casting long, jagged shadows across the wreckage of the downed basilisk. Elira trudged forward, boots sinking into the soft sand, her pace uneven. One arm cradled Rena. The other clutched her side where bruised ribs throbbed with every step. Sweat poured down her neck, plastering strands of black hair to her forehead beneath her helmet. The girl stirred in her arms. Are they gone?" "They're gone," Elira murmured. For now, she didn't add. Over the ridge, the signal. Beacon blinked. A stuttering green pulse nestled inside a rocky crevice. The evac point, 1/2 kilometer left. She took another step, and another. Her mind drifted. She remembered another time, another body in her arms. Her sister Lena, barely 16, coughing up blood in a collapsed outpost after a Thrask strike 5 years ago. Elira had carried her too, just like this. But that time, she hadn't made it in time. This time was different. This time. She was fast enough. She tightened her grip on the girl as if holding on to her own redemption. A sudden rumble overhead snapped her out of the memory. Fatals. 3 human gunships streaked across the sky, sleek and black against the yellow sun. From their undersides, cables dropped and soldiers descended. Marines in desert armor, fanning out and sweeping the area. One broke into a sprint toward her. Captain Ro Jin. Her voice crackled through the comms even before she was close. "Elira? Elira Vance, by all the moons, you're alive." Elira gave her a tired smile, her first in years. "Yeah, still kicking." Jin slowed, stunned. "You took out a basilisk. With that antique?" Elira shrugged. "Had one left in me." She held out Rena gently. The girl looked up at the captain, blinking through ash and sweat. "She's why I stayed," Elira added softer. "She reminds me of someone." Jin nodded, her throat tightening. "Get them aboard," she barked over her shoulder. Back at the field base, medical teams rushed them into triage. Elira waved them off. "Just bruises," she muttered. But Rena got checked, hydrated, and blanketed. In the corner of the dusty tent, the girl clutched a stuffed fox someone had handed her. Elira sat nearby, stripped to her undersuit, her arms scraped and bruised, watching. Captain Jin entered again, a datapad in hand. She knelt beside Elira. "It's everywhere," she said, passing the screen over. Footage from her rifle's recording interface, miraculously recovered, was already circulating through the galactic human network. It had gone viral within hours. The UAT thumbnail? A blurred still of the explosion. The title? The sniper blew up the armored vehicle with one shot. Full firepower. Druiso Xanthera sniper. One shot, Legend Elira scoffed. "Who titles these things?" "Propaganda teams. They're calling you the Basilisk Breaker." Elira winced. "Gods. No one tell my mother." But it wasn't just humans watching. Thrask command. Channels were buzzing. One intercepted comm dispatch from the Dominion read, "Operational update. Recommend high alert against lone human snipers. Female operatives now prioritized threat class Alpha Red. Congratulations," Jin said. "You made the hit list." Elira leaned back on the cot, eyes closed. "Took 'em long enough?" The captain hesitated. "They want to promote you. Sergeant Major, command of your own stealth team." Elira's eyes opened. "I'll pass." Jin arched a brow. You serious? Dead serious. She nodded. Toward Rena. I want to train them. The next gen, snipers, not soldiers, artists. Jin was silent for a moment, then smiled. I'll make it happen. Days passed. Elira didn't leave immediately. She stayed near the girl, visited her at the refugee station after her wounds were treated. The girl stuck to her like glue. You really shot that thing from a mountain? Rena asked one night, curled under a heat blanket. Elira smiled faintly. More like a dune. And it wasn't the first walker I shot at, but the first one I took down with just one. Rena grinned, eyes bright. I want to be like you. Elira crouched beside her, brushing a lock of hair from the girl's forehead. Then you'll have to learn patience, she said. Focus, breathing, how to wait for the wind to still. The girl nodded solemnly, her gaze wide and worshipful. Weeks later, from an orbiting relay ship, a new broadcast went out. Highlight reel of human resistance victories. One clip in particular played again and again. The legendary shot, the basilisk falling, the girl surviving. In a corner of the vid screen, a note blinked. Sniper, CPL, Elira Vance, basilisk breaker. In a bunk somewhere, Rena sat watching, a makeshift toy rifle clutched in her lap. I want to be like her, she whispered again. Outside the stars shimmered, cold, distant, and silent. Then, from deep in the archive, one shot echoed again, crisp, clean, final, and the legend lived on.